Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today, as promised, I want to share with you the story of my nose, or specifically how this nose was kicked off my face back in high school. I did not stutter. For a good 6 or 7 hours, when I was 15 or 16 years old, this nose was not attached to this face. Well, it mostly wasn't attached to this face. Now, don't worry, it wasn't because of some sort of industrial accident or I wasn't being tortured or anything like that. This was a very specific set of circumstances that have their root in my love of rugby. I still adore rugby to this day. It's hard not to love rugby if you come from Wales. And at the time, I was really enjoying playing rugby. I was in the school team, the high school team. I played at the regional level in the county under 20s or something team, whatever it's called. And I also even held the 100 meters record in high school. I may still hold that record. I haven't checked. But the point is, I was really enjoying training for rugby, getting healthier and fitter and better all the time. And also, I really enjoyed the tactics of rugby as well. There was one PE session, just a game within the school, one of the lessons, when the coach decided to do a bit of an experiment. He wanted to get more people involved in playing rugby. So he had essentially the rugby team versus me and a bunch of people who didn't play rugby, so people who liked football or people who just weren't into sport at all. And of course we lost. We lost that game. But I remember a couple of specific moments and movements in the game where just having that tactical awareness, knowing when to duck, when to throw the ball, when to avoid the tackle, where to be to receive the ball to get over the line. I remember really engaging with the moment. And I think, some people call it being in the zone or whatever, but I remember being very present and aware and ready to do what I had to do in that. It was fun, and it was kind of addictive actually. I really enjoyed the physicality, and I can see why people go on to be professional sports people, why they really get a thrill out of playing for their local team or for their national team or whatever. So I was loving rugby. The problem was, though, I was also very injury prone. 3 injuries that I can remember off the top of my head. One of them involves breaking my ankle, although I broke it much more seriously in university. And maybe that's a story for another time. Yeah. So I broke my ankle. I had a concussion. And I don't know if you've ever had a concussion, but having a concussion can be interesting. For you, everything seems fine. There's nothing wrong really in terms of how you're presenting. But for other people observing you, maybe you're talking very slowly, very maybe a bit slurred or something like that, very quietly. And so you have this weird thing where you feel as though you're living at maybe like half speed compared to everyone else around you. My brother actually once had a concussion as well, again from rugby, where he ended up in hospital, and he ended up laid out on a bed, and he was hallucinating that there was a TV screen above the bed. So concussion can do weird things to you. So I've had a concussion, and another injury that comes to mind involves my ring finger actually, and this was when I was part of a ruck and maul type of situation. So most people were on their feet, but I was on the floor having carried the ball and been tackled, so I was meant to sort of release it on the ground. And my hand ended up underneath someone's foot. And obviously wearing rugby boots, these big studs, a stud kind of went between my finger and my hand and dislocated the finger. And there was this sort of like, clicking, popping noise. It was very loud, because even though there was like 6 or 7 boys there, everyone stopped. Like, what just happened? Is everyone okay? This was another game that we were playing within the school, A versus B or whatever. But the point is, I kept on hurting myself, and it was clear that eventually I'd probably have to make a choice between playing rugby and being a serious academic, going off to university and studying in the way that I wanted to, because it was quite clear that if I went to uni and tried to play in the uni team, I'd probably end up with half my time would be me being injured and hobbling around and not really studying properly either. So that was becoming increasingly clear. I was quite unlucky in terms of injuries, but the worst one was the nose. Now, I want to say it was an accident, but it wasn't. And I want to say, it wasn't a bully or anything, but it was. And so this warrants further explanation. We were playing another high school called Holywell, just up the road from Prestatyn, which was my school. And at the time, unbeknownst to us, the head teacher at Holywell had instigated a policy where anyone who was violent, maybe a bully or someone with emotional problems, they were put into the rugby team to sort of get it out of their system in a controlled way. We didn't know this at all, and in our school we were taking the sport very seriously. We were going up the regional rankings as a school team. We'd won trophies and things like that, and I've got an award. I showed you. I was looking through my dad's wallet, a little medal from a smaller competition. So we were seeing this as a serious match, and also a training exercise as well, an opportunity to test ourselves against another local high school. And there was a point during that match where I went to tackle someone who had the ball, a medium-sized guy, got him around the waist as you meant to, but I tackled a little late. Sometimes that just happens, it wasn't on purpose. He had the ball when I dived at him, but by the time I made contact, he had let go of the ball. And as far as he was concerned, this was malicious. I was trying just to stop him from being involved in the next phase of the game, despite the fact that he, because he didn't have the ball, that was an illegal move, this kind of thing. And he took umbrage with me, as they say. And all I remember is tackling him, immediately letting go, rolling away, and starting to stand up. And he clearly just jumped up on his feet. He was clearly very annoyed, just going, and all I could remember at the time as well, was just this logo, an Adidas logo, just coming towards my face, and it was all just sort of dark around the logo, and then everything went dark. For about 30 seconds, apparently, I was unconscious. And what had happened was this guy had just jumped up on his feet and decided, because he was, a school bully, I'm going to kick this man in the face, or this boy in the face. So he kicked me in the face, and seemingly sheared my nose essentially off. Now, I came to about 30 seconds later. I was awake again, so briefly unconscious, which is a semi-serious thing. It's something that you should get medically checked anyway. So I figured we'd be off to the hospital or something. But everyone was stopped. Everyone was like white as a sheet, and their mouths were open. Some people had their hands over their mouths looking at me. I was like, what? What's up? Come on, guys, come on. And I was even going to say, come on, let's keep playing, kind of thing, even though I really shouldn't, just because I'd just been unconscious. I shouldn't have been doing that. But the referee said no, and started signalling over to Mr. Davis, our coach. Mr. Davis comes over, Rob Davis, very good guy, good rugby coach. And he's just like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, Mark. Just come with me. Come with me. And we went to the school was closed. This was after school, so the school was closed. The school nurse was gone at Holywell. So we went to the local GP, doctor's surgery in Holywell, and I briefly saw a nurse, and she just basically cleaned up my face. And all the while, Rob, or Mr. Davis rather say, was very specifically not letting me see my reflection. And it was while she was cleaning my nose, she said something along the lines of, I think we can save it. And I was like, what? And I remember Mr. Davis, because I was on a chair, he sort of went down on, sort of squatted, as it were, to come to my eye level, and just said, Okay, Mark. Your nose is hanging off your face. The boot seemingly just sort of just removed your nose from your face. Don't panic. We're going to take you to the hospital, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I was like, well, let me see it. Come on, let me see it. And I started to slightly panic. He was like, no, you don't want to see this. You really don't. So God only knows what they were seeing. So it was mud, blood, seemingly flesh flapping around, this kind of thing. And we went to hospital. I remember the the triage nurse as we went in just going, okay, right, and so looking up from her desk, wide-eyed, like, okay, yeah, I can see what's wrong there, and making a note of how it had happened and who Mr. Davis was, this kind of thing. My mum was called. She came as soon as she could. It was basically the end of her shift at the library anyway, so she was able to come over. And then we waited, and it was a good 5 hours, I guess. 5, 6, maybe 2 hours had passed since the event, and then a good 5 hours after that, waiting to be treated. So I was seen and I was assessed, and I remember going into the they had this sort of draw curtain assessment ward thing. Drew the curtains on the bay. This guy with gloves on, sort of just essentially just holding my nose and moving it a bit, and again, I couldn't. It was odd enough. Don't remember being in pain. I remember being very, very sore, but I don't remember really actually, the sort of pain you might think one would be in. So clearly there must have been like an adrenaline thing or something going on, or maybe enough time had passed for it to start to not be. The point is that he was manipulating the nose, and he said, yeah, we're going to have to sew this back on. And he goes, there's a great guy, he can do this today, just wait for him to have to be available. So we waited, and eventually this guy comes into the waiting room, and I'd been also told not to eat anything because I'd need anaesthetic. So my brother's there scoffing all these sweets from the vending machine, loving it. He's going, nom 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 nom, oh, Smarties and Skittles. In comes the surgeon, I guess, and he goes, come with me, Mark, come with me. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, cool. And my mum comes with me too, and my brother waits in the waiting room with his Game Boy or whatever. And he goes, hello, my friend. Now, I'm not going. I won't lie to you, he said. This is going to hurt. And I remember even at that point going, your bedside manner's terrible. But he went on to talk about how what he was going to have to do, clean the wound, and at this point it was starting to heal. Well, not starting to heal, but I'm not Wolverine. It was starting to stick back together again. Blood clotting, this kind of thing. So he said he was going to have to tear the wound open again, clean it, make any adjustments he might have to do, and then sew the nose back on. And I was like, yeah, okay. At this point, I still hadn't seen anything. Still hadn't seen my reflection. I don't know how. I think even when I went to the loo, I was so strongly warned about it. I just didn't look in the mirror when I washed my hands. This kind of... Anyway. I remember him saying at some point that he was in the Egyptian national basketball team, which is interesting. So he was a sportsman himself, as it were, international sportsman, and he was just like, yes, competitive sports are great, this kind of thing. But he's like, but anyway, let's get on with this. So he sort of lays me out on the bed or whatever, the trolley, and I can't see anything, and also I still don't like needles. I didn't like needles then. I was a bit nervous about the idea of being injected in the face a few times, but that happened and it was over before I knew it. But it wasn't very much fun. I think they sort of injected me there and there and sort of there and there, all around here. And all I could see was my mum's face. She was sort of looking down at me, just holding my hand and holding it. She was holding my hand increasingly tight as the guy was doing whatever he was doing. Now, all of this was numb. I couldn't feel really what he was doing, but I could see instruments moving and glinting in the light. And there was one particular point when I could feel something, and that was this warm trickle just coming down my cheek. Now at that point I didn't have a beard, so it was just like coming down my chin and dripping onto my rugby shirt, which I was still wearing, obviously. And I had this realization where I thought, oh, that's blood. And he at that point, he sort of wiped my face and he said, I've had to trim a bit. And he sort of explained, as he was finishing up, essentially, that this bit under my nose had the cartilage had just got too dirty and wasn't retrievable. So he had to shorten my nose. Essentially, I had a nose job on the NHS for free. But my nose was slightly shortened than my nostril. Now my nostrils aren't entirely even, in fact. And indeed, to a keen eye, you can still see the scar on the nostril and under the nose, just there. But essentially, he had to clip a bit out of inside of my nose, sew it back together, and then stitch it up. And my only clue as to how grim this had been, in terms of a manoeuvre on my face, or a series of operations, as it were, on my face, was seeing my mum's face. So her hand was getting tighter and tighter on my hand, and I was like, what's up? But then again, this similar sort of thing to what happened on the rugby pitch, all the blood drained from her face. She was just looking very sort of like she might pass out. Presumably, what he did wasn't pleasant to look at. But I saw, finally, the finished article. And he was like, okay, we're done, excellent, well done, go home, relax, rest, here's some painkillers, this kind of thing. And don't touch your nose, essentially, for a while. Don't pick your nose, certainly. And I remember, very specific, I remember coming out of the little room that we'd been in, little operating theatre or whatever, into a corridor, across to a bay opposite, because my mum needed to sit down because of what she had been witnessing. And I turned then and saw a mirror, and I saw my nose, and I saw it was all puffed up and swollen. It wasn't very pleasant at all, and I saw these black stitches all down there and under there. And at that point, I felt sick. Now, thankfully, I hadn't been eating, so I couldn't really be sick. I dry heaved. I was, I felt like I was going to pass out. I didn't. But I got close. And that's when the reality of it really hit home. What had happened to me, and what had to happen to fix what had happened to me, really hit me. And today, ironically, my nose is blocked. Hence all the sniffing. Apologies for that. But it was interesting looking back on it. It was interesting how it happened, and by that I mean to say it's interesting how these traumatic events, or these physically drastic events, they happen, you go through them, and before you know what's going on, they're done, or the initial event is over. And so I learned something from it, in so much as I learned that if I ever do touch wood, if I ever do break my arm or injure myself in another serious way, the adrenaline, the rush to get it fixed, the fixing of it, will be so present in my mind. I'll be so aware of what happens to happen next, and who I've just talked to and what they've said, that I won't be freaking out about the implications of what's happening to me. And that's kind of comforting in a funny sort of way. I often, before then, I would often watch, hospital dramas and think, oh man, if I was hit by a car, I'd really hate to have someone putting a needle in my chest to drain the blood. And no, you wouldn't, because you've been hit by a car. And so, in the moment, a little extra pain or the implications of a needle doesn't, it just won't register. What matters is what's happening on the broader scale to you, and how you're being talked, walked, coaxed through that by the people around you. So I learned a lot about what it's like to have something dramatic happen to you, and then require hospital attention following that event. But yeah, there you go. That's the story of my nose. I don't know if I've ever hinted at this story before on this channel. I don't think I have. I'm amazed that I haven't, given that it was such an important life event for me. But certainly my wife loves these little scars because they're actually numb. So sometimes if we're driving on a long journey, and obviously being in the UK, the passenger is on that side as I'm driving, she'll just be sort of poking my nose like, can you feel that? 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 And it's interesting, so I can, yes, I can feel that, I can feel that, I can feel that, but it's kind of like around about here, it just goes away. I can't really feel anything. I know that my nose is being touched because I can feel it sort of here, if that makes sense. I can feel the ripple or the impact of the nose being touched. But yeah, so that she loves playing that game. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this story. It's certainly one that I hadn't told for a while, but it's certainly one that's made a big impact on me anyway. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care and try not to get your nose kicked off. Bye bye.